All right, good evening. It is 7:01 and I call the Maple Plains City Council meeting to order. It is Monday, May 22nd. Please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Looking for a motion to adopt this evening's agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Fay,
Second.
second by DeLuca. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The ayes have it 5-0. We will begin tonight's meeting with a presentation from ABDO, and Andy, our auditor, is here, so we invite you to the podium.
All right, thank you.
Do you want to put it?
I'll pull up the presentation, which I believe you guys have too.
Yes, we do.
All right, good evening. I'm Andy Berg with ABDO, here to present the 22 financial statement audit. I'll go through the presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions you may have on the actual financial statements too. We do anticipate finalizing the audit after tonight's meeting, so it is in draft form, but I don't anticipate any changes to the numbers. So the end result is that we issue an opinion on your financial statements. We issued an unmodified or clean opinion. As part of the audit, we do gain an understanding of the city's internal controls. We're not issuing an opinion on the effectiveness of the controls. We'll see in the next slide, there's 2 internal control findings that have been in there for a number of years that we'll touch on. As part of that, we also test 7 different areas, Minnesota legal compliance, and issue a report on those. So the state auditor puts out the stuff for us to look at each year. A clean report there, no non-compliance noted. So the 2 internal control findings I mentioned are the preparation of financial statements and limited segregation of duties, very common with small to medium-sized organizations, cities, nonprofit businesses. Really with one person doing all the accounting functions, it's hard to segregate those accounting duties. There are some controls in place with approvals and from your guys' level, approving the claims and budget. So it is important to pay attention to the financial information during the year. But overall, the audit went well, and no real serious findings or unusual findings to report. So now we'll jump into the financial information, starting with the general fund, giving you a history of the unassigned fund balance over the last 5 years and comparing that to your next year's budget along with your budget policy. So you have a minimum fund balance policy to maintain that at 60%. Really, for cash flow purposes with your property taxes, which we'll see on the next couple of slides, your main revenue source coming in halfway through the year. So you get your first tax settlement from the county in June. So you've been right around that fund balance policy the last few years, right about that 60%, dropped a little bit this year at 57% of your 2023 budget. Really the main driver of that is the increase in the budget up to just under 1.9 million from 1.7 million. Now if we look at the activity during the year in the general fund, here's the budget to actual results, with the first column being your final budget, then your actual, and then the variance. So total revenues just over that 1.8 million, over budget by about 138,000. The biggest driver there is licenses and permits, so some development related activity. And then expenditures over budget by about 113,000, ending at just under 1.7 million, with the biggest area being over budget, public works, followed by general government. So revenues over expenditures about 160,000. You did transfer out 110,000 with that going into your capital fund. So total fund balance increased about 50,000. So now we'll look at some revenue and expenditure trends over 3 years. First with the general fund revenues by type. So like I mentioned, the property taxes are the main revenue source of the general fund, indicated by that first group of columns, with orange being 2020, yellow 2021, and then black 2022. Like we saw with the increasing budget, your property taxes has increased each of the 3 years too. The next largest area is the intergovernmental. You'll see pretty consistent from 21 to 22. It was higher back in 2020 due to the CARES COVID funding that was received. So here's a similar graph with the expenditures by type. First group there is your general government, fairly consistent from 21 to 22, a little bit of a drop from 2020. Public safety is the highest area spending with increase from 21 to 22. And then public works also increased from 21 to 22. And then you transfers out there that really a function of the approved budget decreasing each of the 3 years presented. So now if we move on to other funds, first looking at the special revenue funds, you have 3 special revenue funds. The first one, the fire partnership, total fund balance ending at about $370,000, which was about a $76,000 increase, consistent with the fire partnership budget. You have your American Rescue Plan Fund. Really no funds spent in 2022. You do have unspent funds about $231,000 to be spent in 23 and 24. And then you have your EDA, your Economic Development Fund, decreased a little bit, about $5,500, ending at about $8,500. Moving on to your capital project funds. Here you have 4 different funds in total, about $2.1 million. Increase $60,000. The largest one's your capital project fund, so this is a fund where you've been transferring in from your general fund. Increase about $75,000 during the year, ending at $2.2 million. You have your 22 street project fund with an ending fund balance of $72,000, which is unspent bond proceeds. So you issued bonds in 22 to fund that project. There's about $800,000 of expenditures out of here, and then the water, sewer, and storm portion were recorded in those respective funds. You have your downtown development fund with a deficit of about $180,000. That's really been unchanged for many years there. We just recommend cleaning that up. I mean, it's unlikely that there's going to be additional funding sources, so we just recommend possibly a transfer from your capital projects fund to close that deficit out. And then you have some remaining unspent bond proceeds in your 21 street reconstruction fund of about $34,000. If there's any more costs related to that project, that can be used for that. Otherwise, that's restricted money and probably should be transferred into the debt service fund to help fund the principal and interest payments. Speaking of debt service funds, here's your outstanding debt and your governmental funds. So this is the amount in your governmental, basically the street portion, the water, sewer, and storm. The portion of that debt's recorded in those funds. So total debt here of just under $4.5 million with outstanding interest over the life of the bonds of about $1.1 million. You can see over the next 10 years by that graph there, the principal and interest payment right around that $350,000 being paid back with property taxes and special assessments. So it's important to monitor those levies each year and the sources coming in to ensure you're going to make your principal and interest payments. So now with the enterprise funds here, we give you 2 different comparisons. Cash flow from operation graph on the top over 4 years, and including the principal and interest on the debt, and then also a cash balance graph. So a couple items pointed out here is, like you've been raising those water rates to cover costs. You can see that that has increased operating receipts with that orange portion of the bar increasing each of the years. Still not fully covering the operating costs and the principal and interest on the debt. The cash balance has remained fairly consistent, about $972,000 compared to $997 last year. Really broken out between designated for capital and operating. So the orange portion is the operating. We do give a minimum target balance there, which is 50% of your operating costs plus the next year's debt service. So you can see the operating portion is a little bit under that. With the sewer fund, again, a similar comparison, and there the rates have been going up too, so that orange bar has increased a little bit each year, but again, still not generating enough cash to cover operations and your debt service. With some other revenue sources in there too. The cash has improved, so you were at a deficit of about 103,000 back in 2020, and it did go positive this year to about 39,000. And then your stormwater fund, the receipts coming in from the utility billing, the orange, fairly consistent over the 4 years presented. Kind of a break even with that debt service over the past three. The operating costs did jump in 22, indicated by the increase in the yellow portion of the bar. Cash decreasing a little bit due to that, ending at about 479,000, down from about 525,000. Again, important to look at this fund too. Continue to monitor the rates here with the additional debt service components coming in. So we covered all the different funds of the city. Here, they're all combined with the cash and investments over a 3-year period. You can see each of those 3 years it has increased, with the bulk of it being in that capital project fund where I mentioned at about 2.2 million of ending fund balance. So now we'll look at some key performance indicators with the city of Maple Plain indicated by the orange bar. Class 4 cities throughout the state of Minnesota, so cities under 10,000 population, and then all cities in Hennepin County indicated by the black bar. The first one on the left there is your tax rate, so fairly consistent and dropping over the 4 years presented, in line with other Class 4 cities and above cities in Hennepin County. And then your taxes per capita. You saw a little bit of an increase from 22 to 21 and then down a little bit in 22. Right in line with the cities in Hennepin County and a little bit above the Class 4 cities. And a couple of debt graphs here. The main one on the left, the debt per capita. Like we saw in the debt service fund, you've been issuing bonds to pay for street projects, which is indicated by the increase in that orange bar. A little bit of a decrease in 22, and that number will really fluctuate depending on future debt issuances and the pay down of the current debt that's out there. These two are expenditure graphs looking at your governmental fund expenditure, so this does not include the enterprise funds, your water, sewer, storm. The one on the left there is the current expenditures per capita. That number has decreased each of the last 3 years, a little bit above both those peer group comparisons. And then the capital expenditures per capita, that's going to vary depending on the projects you have going on, such as the 22 street project this year. A little bit of a decrease in 22 compared to the previous 2 years. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions that anyone has.
Any questions for Andy?
I do.
Hey, Councilmember DeLuca.
Andy, when you talked about the comparison of the other cities a few slides ago, you talked about the Class 4 cities in the area under 10,000. It's difficult to look at a city of 1,800 compared to a city of 9,900. Is there a breakdown that you'd ever consider doing with smaller cities to compare us for taxes and these indicators? And I know they're just indices, but we're 1,800. To compare us with a city of 10,000, that's like a night and day difference.
Yeah, I get that. It's really the range of all those cities throughout the whole state, so there's a good mix of population and cities in there. They're not all 10,000. There's some year-size population, and we really pull it based on how the state puts their different classes of cities. And if you pull the bigger ones, the per capita numbers aren't that different. You're not going to see a big drastics, kind of like we see with the cities in Hennepin County. I mean, there's a little bit difference, but you pull them throughout the state. That's kind of, I mean, you can slice and dice a number of different ways. You can pick a specific city to compare to. You can pull 10 different cities. So really it's, you know, it's looking at it at trends over time, and you're not going to make any one decision on this KPI versus that one, and you know, really
It's always been difficult for us because we don't know who to compare ourselves to. Even in studies that we do, we always have difficulty figuring out who's like Maple Plain. And there aren't very many of us.
Yep, no, I get that, because you can have a different residential versus business mix, you can have a growing city, an established city, a redeveloping city, so there's,
Okay.
yeah,
Thank you.
I understand, yep.
Other questions for Andy from ABDO? Well, thank you for being here and for the report. We appreciate
All right.
your time.
Thank you.
and being present. And also kudos to our staff, once again, for a great report, so, yeah. All right, thank you. All right.
You're welcome.
Next item of business this evening is visitors to be heard. Do we have any visitors to be heard? Okay, here. It's still locked. Next, moving on, we'll move on to our consent agenda. Our consent agenda this evening includes minutes of the April 3rd City Council Workshop, minutes of the April 5th City Council Workshop, minutes of the April 10th City Council Workshop, minutes of the April 13th City Council Workshop, minutes of the April 18th Board of Appeal and Equalization, minutes of the April 18th City Council Workshop, minutes of the April 24th City Council Workshop, and minutes of the April 24th City Council Business Meeting. And then also includes Timpy Field fence repair and the task cafeteria plan. Looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Councilmember Burek,
Second.
second by Councilmember DeLuca. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Next item of business this evening is accounts payable, and I'm going to turn that over to staff. I know Sharon put together the report, but I will turn it over to Grant and Shirley.
Are there any questions that the city council has on the payment of claim, or the, and the amount, total amount is what here?
I had one question.
Okay.
Bolton and Mink, we've got one that's for January 31st and then for April 28th. Did we miss the January?
They did.
They did,
Mhm.
okay.
Mhm.
It's just kind of a double whammy.
Yes, it is. Mhm.
And more just a question too, on page 187, we purchased 3 first aid kits, all in this, all for the same building?
I really
All
don't.
for Public Works?
Yeah. All
That
for
seemed,
public
that seemed
work.
excessive.
And which page was that?
Page 187.
Oh, Cintas Corporation?
Yeah,
We can ask staff what that was about
okay.
and
I
clarify.
mean, I want them to
next time.
have first aid, but 3 seems a little excessive for that small building. Okay. Any other questions regarding accounts payable? Okay, with that, I'm looking for a motion to approve the city check batch.
So moved.
Moved by Francis,
Second.
second by Fay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the city check batch signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Next, I'm looking for a motion to approve the fire partnership check batch.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Fay,
Second.
second by DeLuca. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the fire ship check batch signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries 5-0. Next, we'll move on to staff reports. Those were all submitted in writing. We did receive a late submission today from Public Works. Grant, will you make sure to get that added online and just for documentation and for transparency as well? This month, we received these reports, but before we do that, I'd like to open it up for questions. All right, hearing none, I am looking for a motion to receive all staff reports as submitted in writing.
So moved.
Moved by DeLuca,
I'll second that.
second by Burek. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Next item of business this evening is the support of National Poppy Day. And we have a proclamation for them that I will read, and then we will present to the American Legion Auxiliary. Proclamation. Whereas poppies are worn and displayed as a symbolic tribute to the fallen and future veterans and members of the armed forces, and whereas the use of the poppy symbolically comes from the poem In Flanders Fields, which movingly begins, In Flanders Fields the poppies blow, between the crosses, row on row, referring to the poppies that sprang up in the churned up earth of newly dug soldiers' graves in parts of Belgium and France following World War I, and whereas at the end of World War I, the American Legion adopted the poppy as a symbol of freedom and the blood sacrificed by members of the armed forces in war, and whereas the American Legion has long utilized the red poppy as its official flower, symbolizing the blood shed by those who have served in the United States Armed Forces, and whereas the poppy is worn in England and Canada on Remembrance Day, also known as Armistice Day, and Poppy Day to commemorate members of the armed forces who have died in the line of duty. And whereas wearing a poppy can unite citizens from across the country who wish to show their patriotism and appreciation for those who serve as members of the United States Armed Forces, and whereas the Friday before each Memorial Day is an appropriate day to recognize as National Poppy Day, and whereas the American Legion family has the support of Congress to designate the Friday before Memorial Day as National Poppy Day, therefore, be it resolved by the Council of the City of Maple Plain that this council supports the goals and ideals of National Poppy Day and encourages all citizens, residents, and visitors of the United States to join in observing National Poppy Day to honor every member of the armed forces who has died in the name of liberty, freedom, and democracy, while also showing their support for living veterans, members of the armed forces, and their families. So we'd like to invite the American Legion forward to receive the proclamation and thank them for their service to the community. Mardell DeCamp is coming forward, and she is the president of the American Legion Auxiliary, joined by many Legion Auxiliary members as well in the audience today.
Thank you, Julie, and your council. And we hope that lots of you come out to our Memorial Day service at Lewis Cemetery Monday morning at 10:30.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie.
Smile at them. All right, thank you. Next item of new business this evening is 4890 Main Street Subdivision. And I will turn that over to staff. Sorry, Mark.
I don't know if the council wants the images up there or.
The viewing audience might, we have them in our packet,
Yeah.
if it's not too hard.
I think we should be good.
Great.
What is up? Okay. Thank you, Honorable Mayor, Council. This item's coming before you after being considered by the Planning Commission at their last regularly scheduled meeting and holding a public hearing on the application. It's an application made by Allison Brent McPherson for the property located at 4890 Main Street East to allow a minor subdivision of the property to split the property into 2 lots. Subject property is located in between the blocks of Main Street East and Independence Street, and it's located kind of in a mid-block scenario. The property is currently zoned by the city as R2A, single-family residential, and guided by the comprehensive plan as low-density residential. It's approximately 0.61 acres in overall area. The applicant approached the city about the possibility of subdividing the property into 2 parcels that would make it somewhat consistent with the parcels that surround this particular property, and then certainly within the block. And the city noted the requirements relating to the zoning ordinance. So this property is zoned R2A, which is a district that covers a handful of properties in between Main Street and Independence Street, as well as some properties located along Baker Park Road or County Road 19 on the east side of the city. There's a small pocket also a little bit more central to the city. But in any case, the R2A does allow properties to have certain standards, so minimum lot size of 10,000 square feet and a minimum lot width of 80 lineal feet of road frontage. So the applicant's proposing to split the property down the middle of the property, essentially, creating a north parcel and a south parcel. The north parcel and the south parcel are roughly the same size, the north parcel being 13,216 and the south parcel being 13,200 square feet. So with that, they have the acreage that's required for the zoning requirements, and then the minimum lot width is 80 feet, and the current lot width is 80 feet. So both parcels would meet the lot width. The city did bring this to the Planning Commission and held a public hearing. There was one comment from a neighboring property owner that is kitty corner across Independence Street, and they provided some written comments to the city that were entered into the record for the Planning Commission. Ultimately, the Planning Commission discussed this request. They did ask in their discussion, is the proposed dividing line consistent with the dividing line of the adjacent properties? I did confirm with the surveyor that if you see the line that's on the east and west side, this line aligns with that. And so that does correspond to the question that the Planning Commission asked. Outside of that, we did work with the applicant's surveyor between the Planning Commission meeting and this meeting to obtain a exhibit and then legal descriptions that shows the requisite drainage and utility easements around the perimeter of the property. So you can see those now on the packet that was included or on the exhibit that was included in your packet. Outside of that, the city would want to review and approve the driveway for the north lot at the time that building permit would be submitted. So at some time when if there's a building permit submitted on that north property, the city would review the driveway location. And then the only other thing noted in the report was there is a park dedication fee for the creation of a new lot. That's in accordance with the city's fee schedule. That fee would be applicable and due upon the subdivision of this property. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions on the report. It's a fairly simple report. But we did look at this in quite a bit of detail, so.
Great. Any questions for staff? All right. Hearing none, I'm looking for a motion to approve the resolution approving a minor subdivision allowing a lot split on the property located at 4890 Main Street.
So moved.
Moved by DeLuca,
Second.
second by Fay. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. All right. Next item of business is our water molding report, and I will invite Bolton and Mink. Okay, forward.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. So we recently completed the citywide water modeling effort, and so I'll just go through kind of what we found here. We reviewed the water main as-built and updated the GIS data as we went through. We built a model using a software called WaterCAD. We conducted 8 flow tests around the city, so actual field flowing the hydrants and get measurements off of those, usually kind of around the perimeter and the dead ends. We reviewed those results and troubleshot any issues we found. There actually wasn't much in the way of it calibrated pretty well, so that was a good sign. And then to sum it all up, we analyzed 3 system upgrade alternatives to meet the fire flow demands and supply, based on what was in the CIP, and then one area that I'll go over here in a minute too. And so the things we're looking for in the water model is the average daily demand pressures between 35 PSI and 100 PSI, and then preferred between 60 and 80. Really 75 is kind of the max that we want, but homes can put in their own pressure reducing valves if the pressure is too high. And then the fire flows that we're looking for, really determined by the insurance safety organization, but the minimum flow for residential is 1,000 gallons per minute, and then commercial and industrial is somewhere around 3,500 gallons per minute. Those are more on a property by property basis. So that anything above 1,000 again is good, and that's what we're looking for. So here, and it's a little difficult to see on that screen, but the orange mains are 6-inch pipes, and then the greens and the brighter greens are 8 and 10 inch, and then a little bit of 12-inch in the center of town around the treatment plant. And then this is the existing system pressures based on average daily demand. So greens and blues, purples are the highest, and so the city is in really good shape there as far as pressure goes. And then this is the fire flow demand, and this is based on maximum daily demand, which I believe is drawing about 445 gallons per minute. So we kind of assume the worst case scenario when we're figuring fire flow demand, so that if it's stressed, the fire can still handle what they're running into out in the field. Average fire flow available was about 2,500 gallons per minute. Again, purple's the best here. That's in the center of town, and then the yellows are kind of on the fringes, so like down in the south in the industrial park area, and then just that one little corner up on Baker Park Road. So this slide just pulls both of those together. And then the first scenario we looked at, and you can see, is our upcoming project here to update or to upgrade the 6-inch pipe that's remaining on Independence Street to an 8-inch pipe. And the pressure really didn't change at all. And pressure is a function of really tower height, so you're not going to see much between those two maps. But what you can see here, and I've got it blocked off in the right-hand part of town there, or the east side of town, a little bit of change in the pressures available, and everything definitely increases just by making that one main 2 inches larger. So then the next scenario is basically we went all the way through the CIP, what's in there, and upgraded all those pipes to 8-inch. We found a couple small chunks that we weren't initially planning on of 6-inch pipe that would be left across Highway 12, so we want to make sure those get included, so you don't have a couple 100-foot remnants of 6-inch pipe necking down as we cross the highway. Again, pressures really aren't affected there, but the big block there, that we do a really good job of kind of bringing a lot more of the city up in available fire flow. But what we're left with, there's still those 2 small areas that are a little bit lower in fire flow. Again, it's acceptable. So again, on Baker Park Road and down in the industrial park. So with that, we wanted to look at just one small tweak. And so in the future, if we were to loop down on Bud Avenue, Poplar, and Willow Street, and just do a 6-inch loop, what difference does that make to that area? And so that takes the area that was from yellow and puts it all in the 1,500 to 2,000 gallons per minute range, which is a pretty simple modification to really get them up to required needs there. So with that, the model shows that existing infrastructure is adequate. It provides pressure and fire flows within recommended standards. There was one discrepancy that when we were collecting records from the city, that the water sold didn't quite match water delivered, and so that was something that should be looked into a little bit, and just a matter of where the records are coming from exactly. We also, now we have a working water model. We can quickly use that to evaluate any future upgrades, developments, redevelopment, and that was the main purpose of this exercise. So, do you guys have any questions about the water model?
When you modeled this, are you assuming simply the footprint of Maple Plain?
Yes.
Because we have a development going in that's going to be utilizing water in Medina, and a potential of another one in Medina that could draw significant amounts of water. And my concern is, do we have enough fire capacity if we do that? I'm looking over at our chief too.
Yeah, and so
If you've only modeled this on us, we
Yep.
need to take into account that we're going to have some significant draws outside the city.
Right, and so now that this is built, we can quickly look at, what do they think, how big are they gonna be, and what do they think they wanna use, and we can plug that in.
Perfect.
As far as what's drawn and what fire flows they need, and then if they need more than what our system can easily deliver them, then that's a tack that, we can bring that to the negotiating table to potentially need to upsize some mains.
Other questions? Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that work and for coming in and going over it with us as well. All right. So, will you be doing the next report
Yeah,
as well?
I'll go through the next
Okay, you
one,
can just
yep.
keep going.
Yeah, so I'll present where we're kind of sitting with the sanitary sewer investigation, an update on that. Just to refresh your memory, Med Council, I believe it was late last fall, alerted the city of excess I&I inflow and infiltration into the sewer system. We had some meetings on that and prepared a plan this spring to investigate, what the causes could be. So really just kind of let you guys know where we're sitting. We identified 5 inlet pipes within 3 manholes that would isolate the city's sewer infrastructure and kind of break up the city into chunks. We installed those meters in early April. We've preliminary reviewed and analyzed the results, and there's not a lot at the moment that we can go off of, but I'll go through that here real quick. And then we've posted notices to residents. If you see something, if you see an area ponding and then it disappears really quickly, again, let us know. That's an area of concern that we're looking for, is something that goes away and it shouldn't go away. And then we've been driving around during rain and just trying to find those spots ourselves as well. And then Dylan's not here, but he found one area that we'll continue to investigate too and put it on our list to get it fixed, is a separation in a pipe over in the southeast part of town. So that's a little bit hard for you guys to see, but there's 5 different colors there. So we got a west chunk in purple, north central chunk in blue, and then the northeast portion in yellow, southeast in green, and then kind of the south center in orange. So the meters are measuring the flow rate of the pipes in gallons per minute. We've tried to average the daily dry weather. We started in April. Sometimes they start these in February and March before the snow starts melting. So our averages will change a little bit here as we go. And then we've looked at what we think the peak percentage is. So this is the west area of town, the biggest area. Purple, or kind of I don't know if I've got a pointer here. So the purple that's the 15-minute readings that we're getting. And again, this area of town is receiving the big lift station on the west side, so that's why it jumps up and down a lot more than some of the next ones that you'll see. Kind of what we're looking for though is the peak. So this one at the moment is peaked about 4 times what we're seeing for the average, and that was around I think April 20th, early there, when we had the biggest rain event so far. The north central part of town, I think this one is the lowest. It's been a little bit more erratic as far as flow, so that's part of what we'll keep looking at and why that is. But the peak there we're noting is 288%, so just over 3 times the average. Northeast, 470%. I think that is the highest. percent change anyway. South Central is 263, so just over 2.5 times there. And that one really moved a lot early on, so that might be part of one of those areas we need to look into deeper. And then the East has been pretty consistent as far as flows with a 4 times peak there as well. So as you can see, nothing is head and shoulders above the rest. I did really say let's move all the meters over there and separate them yet. So what we want to do is leave them in for at least one more large rain event. Compare that with the Met Council data, lift station data as that becomes available. And then after we get a little bit farther into this, we'll investigate farther, looking at moving meters around. Compare those flows with the land uses, and then continue with CIPP repairs and field investigations as things pop up when we notice them. So that is all for my report. Do you have any questions?
At what point do you check in with the Met Council? Were we given a date, or is it when this is all done?
We'll give them updates here. We just told them we're looking into it. They know we've got this plan, and it's kind of laid out that the same thing you guys approved, I think, in February. We sent that over to them.
Okay.
They know we're looking at it. We're asking for their flow data, and so just trying to.
So there's communication going
Yep.
on, so, okay, thank you. That's what I wanted to make sure.
One of your earlier slides mentioned that you identified a source of I&I. Was that a aha moment? Is it something
We hoped it would be, but as you saw from all of these graphs, that one particular one wasn't a whole lot different than any of the others, but there's a little bit of a separation there. There's a sinkhole around it in the ground, so it's one that we're going to go after, but it's not the smoking gun we're looking for.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you for your work, and hopefully we'll figure out the mystery soon. All right. Next item of business this evening is Downtown Development Multi-Housing Revenue Bond, and I'm going to turn that over to Sophia.
Oh, Sophia's not here.
Oh, sorry.
So
I'm
we're
going to
just,
turn that to Grant.
yeah, I'll just provide a very, very basic overview.
Okay.
We'd asked for questions beforehand, we didn't receive any, so essentially what is before you is a preliminary issuer resolution, and that provides approval to the issuance of a reference bond in the amount of $9 million. It authorizes the preparation and submission of an allocation application to MMB, which is Minnesota Management and Budget. Yeah, they sent this over. It just comes down to deadlines and why this is in front of us now. Their first allocations will be made July 3rd. For these that have been approved by June 26th. Our next actual business meeting where this could be approved is June 26th, though. It's just a preliminary bond that kind of lets them start the process of applying for this MMB application. So.
Okay.
Who pays the cost of all of this work and the bond, the developer?
That's a great question. I wasn't able to get that answered before today. So that's partially why Sophia's not here. I didn't know where it would go to.
Mark?
Mayor, Council, if you want, I could answer that.
We'd like that, please.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sure.
says it right here.
I did have a discussion with Sophia too on this, and I am familiar with the issuance of conduit bonds. So, but all the costs and fees are going to be borne by the applicant, not the city. So that would include all costs associated with drafting the documents, issuance of the documents, and then the city would typically, and in this case, we've talked about with the developer that we would be charging a fee to issue those conduit finance bonds. So that's an administrative fee that the city would charge for the issuance, but all of the other soft costs associated would be paid for by the applicant.
Directly by the applicant or through the city to be reimbursed by the applicant?
Typically directly.
Okay.
It's explained in the very last paragraph on the last page. It tells you exactly who will be responsible for what expenses and cost. You see that?
Mm-hmm. Mark, I'm aware that this is a statutorily required component that the city needs to remain, or be a, kind of that conduit in order for these bonds to be created, and I understand there's a time frame, which is why we're here, because I believe it was, they get let in July or something like that, so time is of the essence, I get that. But I said this in 2 EDA meetings, and I'm gonna say it again tonight. I've seen nothing from this developer. I haven't seen elevations, I haven't seen floor plans, I haven't seen spec sheets, I haven't seen a term sheet. And here we are, because time is of the essence, we're authorizing the incorporation of these conduit bonds, yet I've got nothing. I've never even met the developer yet. So when are we gonna start to see something from these people? Because I'm very concerned that we're gonna get so far into this process, and it's gonna be all or nothing. And we're gonna just have to take whatever is presented to us.
Yeah. Honorable Mayor, Council, what you're looking at tonight in the resolution tonight is just the authorization to be able to submit, to be able to issue those in the occurrence that we get a deal done with this developer. We are working, we've gotten the developer's pro forma. We did show the new site plan and the elevations at the last EDA meeting, which was just that concept level, which will be back with the pro forma and a proposed letter of intent, or in this case, a preliminary development agreement, hopefully shortly. The developer is here tonight, and so he and I have been going back and forth on the pro forma, and we are trying to put together those pieces, and hopefully, well, not hopefully, we will have something in front of you in the next couple of weeks. We just need to schedule that meeting. So this does not in any way, shape, and I did talk to Sophia, and I was very clear with that. There is zero obligation of the city tonight to actually do anything with this. You're setting the table so that you have the ability to do it, and that's what's time sensitive. So.
Other questions for staff? So looking for a motion for preliminary approval of the issuance of the reference bonds.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Councilmember Francis,
Second?
second by Councilmember DeLuca. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. All right, thank you. All right. Next item of business this evening is the fee schedule update, and I'm going to turn that over to Grant.
Honorable Mayor and Council, the item before you is just an update to our fee schedule. Primarily, it is looking at, I set my page down one sec. Updating the tobacco license, utility assessment, and excavation and grading permits aspect of these. Fairly nominal changes just to update to current practices of the office. So, for instance, it's $150. It's now going to be $200 for a tobacco license. We've been doing that. Utility assessment, now there's, I believe, $150 for that one. And then the excavating and grading permits, before it was just you didn't need a permit, and there was no cost because no permit for any amount of cubic dirt that was greater than 99 cubic yards. Now it's just you need a permit at no cost for 25 to 99 yards. But you need a permit. That way we can make sure that elevation and such isn't being messed up further. And so these are just updates we wanted to put in the fee schedule to reflect the current practices of staff.
Thank you. So looking for a motion to approve the ordinance 324, amending the fee schedule for tobacco license, utility assessment, and excavation and grading permits.
I'll make that motion.
Moved by Burek,
Second.
second by Fay. Any discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. And Chief, are we good to go or should we wait? Do you have everyone here? We're good? Okay, perfect. Thank you for your flexibility. Next item of business this evening is the oath of office. So I'm going to turn that over to our fire chief.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council. And again, I want to say thank you for giving the fire department this opportunity to recognize the promotion of one of our firefighters from firefighter to lieutenant. We'll shortly be swearing in Lieutenant Patrick Felton now. And if you guys want to come forward, along with Brad. Patrick joined the fire department in 2019, just before the infamous, what was it that we had back then? Like the COVID or pandemic or whatever. Patrick is one of the few people that actually work in town, and so he's fairly available and makes a high percentage of our calls. And in the 4 short years that he's been on our department, he's shown absolutely exemplary leadership within the with our firefighters, and has attended numerous officer schools to kind of prep himself for this event tonight. As we all know, firefighting is, I think some of you have heard this before, firefighting is not a job, but it's a calling. It's a something that is just inside that you want to serve your community. You don't do it for the money. You don't do it for the possibility of being an officer, for sure. Again, we have the privilege of assisting our community and our community members on many, many, many different types of emergencies, all the way from simple broken leg to heart attacks. We just had another one the other night that the Widowmaker, they pulled over, we responded, and he got in, and before the wife could get to the hospital, he was in surgery already. So it was just another example of what our people do for our citizens of our community. To obviously fighting structure fires, hazmat. Tonight, the guys are down training on active shooter. When I got on the fire department a few years ago, you never even heard of active shooter. We all carried guns around in our cars to go pheasant hunting after school or whatever. And now we're training on active shooter and how we can assist our law enforcement community in those types of calls. And hopefully Lieutenant Felton doesn't ever have to command a scene like that, but he's very capable if that does come through. So Patrick lives in Independence and with his wife Leah. And Patrick, well, she's here. Awesome. Awesome. You snuck in behind me. I'm not a mom, so I don't have eyes in the back of my head. Lives in Independence with his wife Leah and little daughter Ava. And Patrick is a typical firefighter. He wears many, many different hats. And one of the hats that he also wears is softball coach for his little girl Ava. How are you doing? She does. Awesome. And my granddaughter just happens to be on that team too, I understand, right? Yeah, so that's pretty awesome. She's got an awesome coach. So so tonight we'll have Leah pinning him, which is pretty awesome. It was just a few short years ago you were doing the regular badge, I think, the silver. So he's got a silver one, and people have asked, what's the difference between a silver badge and a gold badge? It's the leadership and responsibility. You go from being a firefighter going to now you want all your people to go home safely. Being aware of the surroundings, make sure that there's not a roof starting to cave in or a floor, or if the smoke changes colors, get your guys out. And all that type of stuff our officers are in charge of, and it's a big responsibility, Patrick, but I know you're up for it. And you've displayed a lot of leadership in other areas in your private business life and in your job. So we're going to, I don't know if you want to read along with me, but raise your right hand, and I will swear you in. I, Patrick Felton, do solemnly swear.
I, Patrick Felton, do solemnly swear
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America.
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America
and the state of Minnesota against all enemies, both foreign and domestic.
and the state of Minnesota against all enemies, both foreign and domestic.
And I will faithfully and impartially discharge my duties
And I will faithfully and impartially discharge my duties
as a lieutenant of the Maple Plain Fire Department
as a lieutenant of the Maple Plain Fire Department
under the appointment of the department according to the laws of Minnesota,
under the appointment of the department according to the laws of Minnesota,
County of Hennepin,
County of Hennepin,
the cities we serve,
the cities we serve,
to the best of my skills and abilities.
to the best of my skills and abilities.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Patrick. Now you gotta get rid of that other one. Again, I just want to say thank you to Mayor, Council, for your support of the fire department, and also that water modeling deal. It's something we've been looking for a long time, so whoever did that, thank you. And I'm sure we'll be having lots of chats about that in the future, too.
We
So
will.
I'd like to get a photo with the council, with Lieutenant, if you could, got a couple minutes to spare to do that?
I think so, after all you guys get, we can do that.
Thank you.
All right.
You want to just go
Up here?
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good one there.
And also, by the way, thank you to the auxiliary. We're all sporting copies here tonight, so thank you. Leah and Ava, you're going to get your pictures taken too.
We're gonna have to pretend like we like each other.
We're all kind of the same height.
And like each other a little bit more.
Oh, you're not that.
Are we?
Yeah, I just scoot this way so we can play to the center.
Center on this, between the flags, there we go.
That's better. Are we good? All right, yep. 3, 2, 1, cheese. We'll do one more just in case. Perfect. All right.
I just give one
Did you guys just say you guys don't want to?
Oh, yeah, it has to. For sure.
Yeah.
We'll do it both ways too, so 3, 2, 1.
Nice smile.
3, 2, 1, cheese. Professional. I'll make sure to send those.
We're
to you guys.
daddy's bad.
Yes, yeah.
And then we'll do the 3 white shirts.
Ava.
Yep. 3, 2, 1, cheese. Nice. All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Do you want one of them?
You guys, thank you.
Oh, I'm okay.
You sure?
Yeah.
It's your chance.
No, I'm
All right.
ready. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
I lowered it.
Thank you. You better not. I'm already short. All right. All right. Thank you again, Lieutenant Felton, for your service, and to all of our Maple Plain firefighters. You are appreciated. Next item of business this evening is a closed session. Closed session with attorney to discuss pending litigation. This session will be closed pursuant to Minnesota statute, section 13D.05, subdivision 3B, to discuss matters permitted by the attorney-client privilege pertaining to pending litigation between the city of Maple Plain and Kirk Kroll and Associates. With that, looking for a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Moved by Francis,
I'll second that motion.
second by Burek. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, we will be entering closed session in a minute. All right, thank you. All right, we came out of closed session at 8:28. We were discussing the pending litigation between the city of Maple Plain and Kirk Kroll. All right. With that, we will move on to council reports and other business. Who would like to kick us off?
Oh, I can kick us off because I don't have a lot to report.
Okay.
I went to the Highway 12 Safety Coalition meeting, and basically the discussion was about a roundabout being installed in Delano at County Line and Highway 12. Don't know when, but it's out there for MnDOT to think about. That was about it. There's a new chair for the Highway 12 Safety Coalition. Phil, and I can't remember his last name.
Phil Kern, the city administrator of
Yeah,
Delano.
Yes, he's the new chair. I also attended Planning Commission, where we talked about the subdivision of the McPherson property, which we talked about earlier tonight. And then I went on vacation.
Yay.
And now I'm back.
All right. Councilmember Fay.
Well, I continue to attend Orono Rotary on a weekly basis. This past week was highlighted by both a board meeting, of which I'm the treasurer, and a planning meeting for Party in the Park. And just a reminder that Party in the Park takes place at Veterans Memorial Park, Saturday, June 3rd from 5 to 11. Show up, music, food, and fun. Attended a personnel meeting where we addressed a series of house cleaning items that were addressed at tonight's workshop. Attended EDA, where we were informed of another interested party in downtown development. Various workshops, special meetings, and I believe a fire commission meeting earlier. And in between all that, I went on vacation too.
Awesome. Councilmember Burek?
I attended the personal committee with John. I have been trying my best to stay active with the police academy. Watershed has taken up some of that time. Watershed was good this week. Budgets are coming up, so something to look forward to. And I participated in planting of trees and the spring cleanup. Got a little bit of sun and threw some stuff away.
Councilmember DeLuca?
And I'll spend my time talking about the Fire Relief Association meeting this month. We had the investment folks come in to talk about the investment returns. Actually, last year was not a good year, a 13% decrease in their funds. Now, comparing that to the S&P or other indices, wasn't that bad. Keep in mind, the fire relief is very, very conservatively invested. So they shoot for a 5% return on their investment. So if you have a year where you have 10 and you have a year that has 0, you'd still have your 5%. That's the target that they have. Should be relatively easy to do a 5% return this year, since many short-term government type of CDs, investments, are at that 4 to 6% range. So should not be difficult to hit their target for this year. There was discussion about the municipal contribution that will be going up based on an indices of inflation. So it'll be an 8% plus 1. We're always a year behind, but there'll be a significant increase that will go into the fire budget, that will go to fire commission. Ray will be putting that amount in the budget and then presenting it. This was also the meeting where they discussed conceptually that the leadership team has to make a decision every year based on the call percentages as to who gets credit for the year. And there were actually 4 firefighters that were not granted credit for this year. 1 new person and a couple of other folks. So if you remember a few years ago, council was involved in those, and we turned that over to the leadership team saying, you guys figure it out. If somebody doesn't hit their 25%, there may be very good reasons why they hit 22 or 21. A couple of these folks had in the 10 and 11% range, and the leadership team just didn't feel comfortable recommending that they give in years of credit. They're still a firefighter, and they're still in good standing. They're just not going to get the credit for this year when they get their pension or their pension down the road. So I applaud the leadership team for looking seriously at those and making what had to be tough decisions.
Thank you. I was able to attend the American Legion Auxiliary meeting. We talked about Poppy Day. We sold poppies at Otten's one day this week, and then also worked on plans for the Memorial Day service. Was able to attend Dave Unmack, the Executive Director of League of Minnesota Cities retirement party, and just kudos to him, just a true public servant and role model. Was able to attend the breakfast meeting with Representative Congressman Phillips with mayors in District 3. We spent a lot of time talking about water, and many cities are struggling with water and infrastructure and just networking and collaborating, so that's always time well spent. Was able to attend the Regional Council of Mayors where we talked about the growing region's economy with Peter Frosch from Greater MSP, and then also the state demographer, Dr. Brower, was there, just kind of an update of where we are now. One thing though with the Fire Commission with Councilmember Fay, we did approve a wellness program called PAR 360, so very grateful that our firefighters will have that support and wellness. The Chamber of Commerce has been busy. Our speaker was Matthias with Foresight MSP, and he talked about cybersecurity and practical tips for smaller organizations. Attended a Hennepin County Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee meeting and elected some new leadership and working on some reorganization there as we have a new chair and dashboard and lots of different details going on in that board, and hope to bring more forward soon. At the Northwest Hennepin League of Municipalities, our Rogers Police Chief came, Chief Dan Willis, and talked about the drug task force and just trends that we are all seeing in our areas and what we can do together as electeds to help with that. Attended the Orno Healthy Youth, and we really focused on the Wellness Expo and just again offering mental health and wellness for everyone. One big update, the Future Fire Service has continued to meet. We've gone to bi-monthly meetings, but since we last met, Hamel and Loretto have formed the West Suburban Fire District. And then Maple Plain is looking at, with our partnership with Independence, we are beginning discussions about possible consolidation with the West Suburban Fire District. So just being transparent with that. The leadership has met with the firefighters, and it's in the infancy stages, but again, looking at collaboration, consolidation, long-term care, planning for the future, and how to best protect our residents and provide that service. So, and as you heard, council has been very busy. You heard on the consent agenda, all the different meetings and hearings and EDA. The admin portfolio has been approved, so we are accepting applications for that through June 6th. Thank you to everyone who brought your stuff in for City Cleanup Day, and a huge thank you to all of the staff who worked on a Saturday, and to all of the volunteers who came out. Councilmember Francis, Councilmember Virak, John DeLong was there. And then at the tree planting, we had some more volunteers and some local church and some residents from around Rainbow Park. So there's 9 new trees in Rainbow Park. If you see a hose there, please leave it there. Do not play with it. It is on a timer watering those trees. Just want to remind everyone to come on out on Memorial Day to Lewis Cemetery at 10:30 on Monday, May 29th for the Memorial Day service put on by the Paulstons and the American Legion. And as Councilmember Fay said, party in the park, and then wear your poppies on Poppy Day, May 26th. So lots going on. Any other announcements or other business to come before the council tonight? Okay, hearing none, looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Fay.
I'll second.
Second by Virak. All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Meeting's adjourned at 8:39.